Good afternoon and welcome to College Goals Sunday. Do you need information on how to obtain financial aid for college? If so, you are in the right place. College Goals Sunday has many benefits. There are benefits to attending a College Goals Sunday event such as you get free on-site professional assistance filling out the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid form. This is the form that's required at all schools to receive any type of federal financial aid. In addition, you get a chance to talk to financial aid professionals about financial aid resources and how to apply. Also, you get information regarding statewide student services, admissions, requirements, and much, much more. Why is College Go Sunday important? College Go Sunday provides assistance in applying for financial aid to families who need it. By delivering help to families in their own communities, College Go Sunday helps ensure that students get the help they need, crossing the paper barrier to qualify for financial aid. When and where is College Go Sunday? College Go Sunday programs are offered at various times in several locations in each participating state. Visit the national website at www.collegegoalsundayusa, all one word, .org for information about programs in your state. And that's www.collegegoalsundayusa.org. What to bring? Parents and students should bring their latest tax information and or last pay stub from the previous year in order to complete the form. Now keep in mind that earlier sessions in January, everyone will be estimating, so it's really important that you bring your last pay stub, any records that you have for bank statements, and we'll show you how to estimate the information. It's also important to pay attention to deadlines. Several states and colleges have early deadlines, so you want to get your FAFSA in as early as possible, and then you can make corrections after your taxes are actually filed at a later date. Privacy. A lot of people are concerned about what happens to the information that you provide when we assist you. Well, all the information reviewed by the College Go Sunday volunteers is kept private and confidential and will not be used for any purpose other than helping students and families apply for financial aid. Students and families' identities will be protected to the best extent possible, and none of the information being requested will be sent to vendors for other purposes besides applying for financial aid. And we don't keep copies of anything, so anything you bring with you, you take back with you. What to bring? Well, one of the most important pieces of information you need to have to complete a FAFSA is the Social Security number. And this can be found on the Social Security card. It's important that you use the correct name from the Social Security card, even if the name is misspelled or an initial is missing or anything like that. So we prefer that you bring the Social Security card with you for that day. It's also important to have the driver's license if the student does have one. W-2 forms from the previous year or the current year, if available, are important, as well as any other records of money earned. You and your spouses, if married, most recent income tax return. So in this case, it would be the 2012 income tax return because no one has filed the 2013 at this point. What else to bring? Parents' federal income tax return from the previous year if you are a dependent student as defined by federal criteria. Untaxed income records for the previous year. Current bank statements, and that's as of the day you fill out the application. And most of this information, especially bank information, is available online now. Current business and investment mortgage information, business and farm records, stocks, bonds, and other investment records. Also, it's important to bring documentation that you are a U.S. permanent resident or other eligible non-citizen if you're not already a citizen. When you go to the College Go Sunday USA site, use the link that we provided earlier, or you can use the one below that will take you directly to a map of all the states showing you which states actually have programs. If you click on the state, it should take you to the website for that particular state. And then there you can find out where the locations are for that particular state, how many programs they will have, what types of services each location will offer. For example, some of our states in the state of Maryland, where I'm from, we offer free tax preparation. In addition, all of our sites offer two scholarships for $500, and it's a drawing at the end of each event. So other sites do different things, and other states have different incentives as well. So we want you to make sure that you have this information. So it's a long site, so you probably want to just click on it and then bookmark it when you're ready to actually locate a site. What is the FAFSA? The FAFSA, as noted earlier, is the free application for federal student aid. Students use this application to apply for federal student grants, work-study money, and loans to assist them in funding their education for college. They also may use this application to apply for most state and some private financial aid. So the form is very important. Will I need to complete my tax return before completing the FAFSA? As noted earlier, at this point in the process, most people haven't filed a tax return. So you will bring the other documentation that we suggested, and we can help you estimate what the numbers will be. If the student and his or her parents are filing an income tax return, we recommend filing it before completing the FAFSA. But however, as stated earlier, at this point, that is too early, so that hasn't been done. Also, with issues surrounding sequestration last year, the IRS will be a little late having the forms ready. So this means that at this point, most people will have to estimate their information anyway to make sure the data gets into the process on time. Most states and colleges, as I said earlier, have early filing deadlines for the FAFSA, so it's important that you estimate and meet the deadline. I always suggest that families keep a calendar of all the due dates for every college and university, and whatever the earliest date is for any one of those, get all of your information done for all of the colleges at that time. Does my step-parent's income and assets have to be reported? Yes. If the parent whose information you are reporting on the FAFSA has married or remarried, you must include information about your step-parent, even if they were not married for the entire year. What if I don't have a Social Security number or don't want to report it on the FAFSA? You must enter your Social Security number on the FAFSA. If you don't submit your Social Security number, the form will be returned unprocessed and you will not be considered for federal student aid. Additionally, at least one parent has to include his or her Social Security number. However, if neither parent has one, the FAFSA instructs those parents to put zeros instead of a Social Security number. So it's important that something is included in that field. Getting started. This is a screenshot of the first page you will see when you log into the FAFSA site, and explains to you the different years. You will see at the bottom 13-14, which is the current academic year, and the year that you would be interested in for the fall, which would be 2014-15. It's important to make sure that you select the correct year when applying for financial aid, because the information has to be academically year specific. So for example, anything in the 13-14 year covers the period of now, this coming spring, up to the first summer session. Anything past July 1 has to be covered under the 14-15 FAFSA. So it's very confusing sometimes. So make sure that when you're doing the process, and that's if you're not coming to one of our sites so we can assist you, make sure that you select the correct year. This page is important as well. This is the login page, and this is where they ask for the student's name and definitely the Social Security number. So you want to make sure that the Social Security number and the date of birth are accurate. And again, getting back to the name has to be however the name is on the Social Security card, whether it's incorrect or not. this is not the place to make that correction. And I didn't mention it earlier, but I see questions coming in, so keep the questions coming in. And at the end of the presentation, we'll go through each of the questions that have been submitted. These are the dependency questions. I know it may appear a little small. You may want to enhance your screenshot so you can see them. But these are the only ways that a student can be automatically independent. A parent's failure or decision to not provide financial data is not a reason for the student to be declared independent for financial aid purposes on the federal side. Legal guardianship. This is a question we get a lot. For this question, the definition of legal guardianship does not include your parents, even if they were appointed by a court to be your guardian. You are also not considered a legal guardian of yourself. Definitions. Homeless. Homeless means lacking fixed, regular, and adequate housing, which includes living in shelters, motels, or cars, or temporarily living with other people because you had nowhere else to go. Unaccompanied means you are not living in the physical custody of your parent or guardian. Youth means you are 21 years of age or younger, or you are still enrolled in high school as of the day you signed this application. Marital status. Marital status students can use FAFSA on the web to update their marital status after submission of the FAFSA. This is something that was new, effective during this academic year. The EFC, or the expected family contribution, will not be calculated and rejected. Only a financial aid administrator can override the reject when the information is not complete. Instructions have been modified to the following. Report your marital status as of the date you sign your FAFSA. If your marital status changes after you sign your FAFSA, check with the financial aid office at the college. So it's important that you keep the lines of communication open with your financial aid office to make sure that they can assist you with any unusual circumstances that may arise, such as getting married after you file the FAFSA. For parents, if you are using the 2014-15 FAFSA, this is new. You are required to list both of your parents and their income and potential contributions if they live together and if they are your legal parents, regardless of their marital status. This is true for same and different sex couples. I'm going to read this again because this is a major change in completion of the FAFSA. And this is effective for the 14-15 year, which is the year that will start in the next fall. And it says, when you're filling out this FAFSA for 14-15, you are required to list both of the parents and their income and potential contributions if they live together and if they are your legal parents, regardless of their marital status. This is true for same and different sex couples. If you are using the 2014-15 FAFSA, you will not need to list both of your parents if they do not live together. But again, as the statement above says, if they live together, you have to list both, or they are not both your legal parents. List only the legal parent. If you have a step-parent married to your legal parent, however, as noted earlier in the presentation, you will be required to list the step-parent. FAFSA financial information. For the parent, if dependent, and student of the spouse, this is collected in the financial section for the parent and student. It includes taxable and untaxed income portions. Also, there's a worksheet that does not ask for taxes paid. So the taxes paid question is one that we get a lot, especially when families are completing the form. A lot of times there's confusion about taxes paid versus your tax liability. And what the FAFSA is looking for is what your actual final liability is after all of your itemized deductions and all of your credits and all of those things have been taken into consideration. So it's important that you make sure you accurately estimate the taxes paid, because that affects the expected family contribution. So if you, For example, if you overestimate the taxes paid, it may make your expected family contribution a lot smaller than it really is. And then at the uh, point of the packaging at the institution, they may go back and reevaluate your information once it's corrected, and then your eligibility will change. So you want to make sure that as early as you possibly can, you put as many you correctly estimate that. And again, that's something we will do for you at one of the College Go Sunday programs. We will help you do the estimations because we're experts at doing that on a regular basis. The IRS data retrieval continues in 1213, and it also continues in 1314 and 1415 as well. So while this is still relatively new to some people, it's also available for corrections. And basically what this is if you fill out your tax return, whenever you do it electronically and it's processed, it takes a couple of weeks for it to be processed. Once it's actually processed and in the IRS system, you're able to go through the FAFSA and use a process called data retrieval and have that information from the IRS automatically retrieved and loaded into the FAFSA. And this is true also if you're going to do a correction. So as I stated in the beginning of the process in the presentation, at this point, you're going to be estimating your information anyway to make the deadline. Then once you actually do your taxes, give it 3, maybe 4 weeks to make sure everything has been processed. And once that happens, you can go back in and use the data retrieval. And this is just a screenshot showing you some of the questions that will be asked of you to see whether or not you're eligible for data retrieval. And as you will see, not everyone can use that process. FAFSA on the web includes logic to make a more accurate decision for the applicant by using IRS data retrieval. As I stated earlier, due to sequestration, the data retrieval will not be available until mid to late February. And the institutions where you apply, they will be more than happy to explain to you how that works. Asset threshold question. Independent students and parents of dependent students that meet criteria are presented with the asset threshold question to determine if asset net worth must be reported and used in the EFC calculation. And again, that's expected family contribution. So not every person who fills out a FAFSA has to include asset information. FAFSA sign and submit. If a dependent student, both parent and student must sign. You can access the PIN, and that's the personal identification number site, if no PIN, or forgot PIN if you have a PIN and just can't remember it. However, when you're completing the FAFSA, it is really exciting now that they actually have information inside of the FAFSA where you can apply for the PIN as you're completing the form early on in the process. Keep in mind that you must agree to the terms before they allow you to submit and use the PIN. It's easier to use the PINs because you can complete your application right then, and you must click on Submit My FAFSA Now for the information to proceed further. Now, keep in mind that if you don't have a PIN, and in some cases, for different reasons, people have issues with the PIN not working, there is an option for you to print out the information and mail it in. However, keep in mind that any time you have to take those extra steps to do that, it takes a while for the information to get to the processor. Someone has to key it in, and then it takes a while before you receive any information. Okay, this is just a screenshot of the sign and submit page, and you will see the information that comes up on that, and it shows you where you include your PIN, where you sign, and then the part where you agree or disagree. And if you disagree, it won't allow you to use this part to submit electronically. So typically, I suggest you actually really read what you're signing, because there are some things in there that some expectations of the person filling out the application and sending the FAFSA in. So you want to make sure that you read all of those things to make sure that you are clear on what the expectations of you as the person completing the FAFSA. And then, of course, you hit submit my FAFSA now. As mentioned earlier, you can apply for your PIN now before you start the FAFSA process, which is a nice way to do it because you already have it. Or you can access it from the FAFSA page itself, actually in the application. So either way is fine. Just some PIN reminders. Parents and the student can create their own PIN, and remember, both parent of a dependent student and the student will each need a PIN. So if you create your own PIN, I always suggest that you make it something you're going to remember and keep it in a safe place, because that PIN is going to follow you all the way through. So once you have a PIN, you can use that PIN all the way through. And parents, if you already have a PIN for a sibling who's already in school, you still can use that PIN for you. However, the new person filling out the FAFSA has to get their own PIN. Okay? In addition, you can request the FSA to generate a PIN that will display on the screen in real time. And this is the option that I recommend for anyone completing the FAFSA if you don't already have one. At that time, it shows right up on the screen. You need to record it, and then you can continue on working with the application. Follow-up when filling out the FAFSA. Follow-up includes a match of name, social security number, and date of birth. If the match is successful, the PIN becomes permanent. If the match is unsuccessful, the applicant is sent a student aid report for signatures and the PIN is disabled. So you want to make sure, as we spoke earlier, about making sure you have the correct social security number. You want to make sure you have the correct name that is on the social security card, and all of those, and the correct date of birth. Everything has to match exactly when they're doing the data matches. The PIN is also used for direct student and parent loans. So this PIN is used for all of your financial aid processes through the federal government. When you receive your confirmation and the student aid report, if you do everything electronically, all of this will show up once you complete the process. It will include on there what your expected family contribution is, and it's important to note that this is just an estimate of what they think you may be able to pay based on the information that you provided on the FAFSA. That number may be more or less once you attend an institution, and based on their cost of attendance, they will tell you, and any other scholarships or resources the student has, that will really determine what the bottom line is. Also, when you're making these decisions, these are 4 or 5 year decisions when you're making them. So if you have only $5,000 to contribute to college, you have $1,000 a year, not $5,000 for the first semester. So you want to make sure that you as a family work together to really map out the resources that it will take to finance the education over a period of time, and not just so much focusing on that first year. You will also get a list of the schools that you added to the FAFSA, and you can add a number of schools to the FAFSA at one time when you process the form online. And it will also give you information about these schools. It will tell you things about the graduation rates and things like that. And I do want to caution you, because those numbers are based on certain criteria and the same question for every school, but you want to really talk to the school and find out what their situation really is before you make that decision. So these things are just guidelines and tools to help you make better decisions when you're trying to decide where you're going to finally attend. Also, before you complete and actually close out of the FAFSA, if you have another one or 2 or 3 to complete for other family members, then you have the ability to start a siblings FAFSA before you actually close out, so that you don't have to repeat all the information again. And something that is relatively new for the past year or so is that they give you estimated financial aid for federal aid eligibility. Now, I really want to caution you about this one, because with the estimated aid, basically they're saying, based on this expected family contribution that we calculated based on the information on this form, it appears that you might be eligible for A, B, and C. It doesn't mean that that is an award notice, or that other factors won't be considered that will make you not eligible for what they think you may be eligible for. So they don't have any of your historical records. They don't know your history, and they haven't done a verification in most cases. So they're really just trying to give you some tools to help you get a better idea once you complete the FAFSA of what you may possibly be able to receive. So that's just a precautionary warning there, because a lot of times families think that once they get that screen that they're finished the process, and that's really just the beginning. So the other schools will require other things for you to do, and you want to make sure that you know exactly what is required of each institution where you applied, and make sure you follow all the instructions and things that they ask you to do, so they can give you a final analysis of what your financial aid eligibility will be. If you use the IRS data retrieval tool on the FAFSA and receive the confirmation page, upon submission, it reminds the students that the IRS data retrieval option is the preferred method of providing tax information, and they can return when their application has been processed to use the tool. And we mentioned this earlier in this presentation so that you will know that it's okay to estimate now, and then you can always go back and use the tool later as long as you meet the criteria. There's also customized messaging that displays when the student and or parent is eligible to use the retrieval and didn't. So if you indicated will file, this information will come up to remind you that this option is available for you, and I strongly recommend that you do take advantage of it. These are things that we suggest you review. We suggest that you always use free services for College Go Sunday to help you complete the FAFSA. And the name may be called different things throughout the country, but as noted in the next bullet, if you use this website and use the map, it will tell you where all of the sites are located and the name of the program in your area. We really strongly suggest that you come prepared to the College Go Sunday program. We can do a much better job of assisting you if you come prepared with the items that we mentioned earlier, such as updated your last pay stub. If you have any income and asset information, bring all of that with you, and things like that. Now, this is something that's important for us as well at all of the College Go Sunday sites. We ask all of the people who come to our locations to complete an online survey. And this is important because we work hand in hand with the Department of Ed in trying to make sure we increase the number of families, one, that apply for the free money that's available for them through the Department of Ed and the federal government. But two, we want to make sure that we help them in their effort to make sure that the financial aid form itself, the FAFSA, is actually completed. A lot of families start the process, but they get caught or they may not have a piece of information, so they end up not finishing. And we know, like most people, if you don't finish it when you start it, a lot of times you're not going to go back and finish. So a lot of people miss out on valuable resources that are available for them because they don't go back and complete the form. So we want to make sure that you come prepared to all of the sites. Bring as much as you have, and as we stated earlier in the presentation, you can bring information from a previous year, and we will work with you to do the estimations to be as accurate as we can at this point so that you can get the form in and get it in early. And then that's one less thing you have to worry about until after getting your taxes done, and then you can go back in, look at the form, use the data retrieval tool, and have the information transferred from the IRS right into the FAFSA. And then you can resend as a correction and start getting your notices from the schools telling you what types of financial aid they're going to offer to you. So we do hope that you found the information today valuable. I'm going to go through and start reading some of the questions that we have and spend the rest of the time answering the questions that I see. The first question that we have is there a way that I can save all of these slides at the end? I think one of our technical folks will answer that for me and let me know that, and I will get back to you. But I'm pretty sure usually they send the presentation to those who signed up so they can have the information as a resource. So thank you for that question. The next question is, how long does it take for the FAFSA application to process? Well, if you process it and you use the online tool, you'll get a response right away. And then in a couple of days, the information will be sent to the schools that you list. And we didn't talk a lot about the FAFSA itself as far as listing schools and things of that nature, because I understand there was another webinar with the Department of Ed actually going line by line with the FAFSA. But you can list several schools at one time, and when you do that, you want to make sure, even if you don't know the name of the school or the student or the code of the school, you can look up the school by name or by state and find the code, and then the information will go to that school. So it usually doesn't take long for the FAFSA itself to be processed. However, it may take several weeks before you receive a notice from the institution, because each institution processes with a different timeline. So that's where the difference will be. Our next question, okay, is what happens if you are behind on filing your taxes for 2 years? Well, that could be a problem. It doesn't prevent you from completing the FAFSA, but you would not be able to use resources like the data retrieval tool. And if you are selected for a process called verification, which is a random process where the individual, either the federal government or individual schools, will select a student and suggest and they have to submit tax documentation, that would be an issue when it comes to things like that. So you can still fill out and estimate the FAFSA, but as I stated before, you would not be able to use the data retrieval option whenever that becomes available. And also, if you're selected for that process called verification, you would not be able to complete it. So that could be an issue. Also, some schools, especially if they have institutional resources, they require that you submit tax information. So you want to make sure that you check with each of the institutions where you or your son or daughter is applying to find out what their policies are with respect to that, because each school handles those types of situations differently. Our next question, where do 529 educational savings get included when filling out the FAFSA form? Well, it depends on who takes out the money for the student. And it depends on your state, what your state policy is, but it really depends on who takes it out. If an aunt or uncle takes the money out, then it's not included. If the parent has taken it out, then it's included, and that would be included in the asset section. And if you look at the FAFSA and you're doing it online, it will tell you exactly where that would go under the asset piece. Our next question. How old must my student be before she's considered not dependent? Well, age-wise is 24. So if a student is under 24, they are considered dependent unless they meet one of the other criteria that was listed on the slide earlier. And that question comes up a lot, whether or not the parent claims the student, and all of those things are not factors anymore. It's strictly whether the student is 24. Okay, next question. Okay, and the question is, what was the website for the PIN again? And I'm going to see if I can quickly scroll back. Okay, and that's the page for the PIN. And I'll just leave that up in case anyone else has a question about that. And as I said during the presentation, it really is a great idea to go in and apply for your PINs now, and that way you'll have them before you start the process. But the other thing is that if you do it while you're doing the FAFSA, it comes right up on the screen, and it works quite well doing it that way also. Okay, the question is, if you have already submitted your FAFSA, should you still go to College Go Sunday? That's an excellent question. And I would say if you're not exactly sure that you filled out everything correctly, I would suggest that you do visit one of the sites. And I'll share a quick story with you. Last year, a family friend came to one of our sites, and I was helping this person, and the person had been listing her home value as an asset for many years, and she was wondering why she never qualified for a Pell Grant. And so when I asked her, she was listing it as money she had in the bank. The value of her home is money in the bank because she saw it as an asset. So when we were working with her and I looked at the question, I was like, "Oh, you have this much money in the bank?" And she was like, "No." I said, "Well, this is what you put here." And when we made the correction and took that out because it was really not going to be included anyway because they don't ask you about the value of your home, her expected family contribution dropped substantially, and she was eligible for a Pell Grant. But for 2 years, she had been putting the wrong information in. So that's the kind of thing that having a professional look over what you put in can offer for you. And our goal is to make sure that we review everything that you put in, just to make sure that either you didn't miss anything or that something was put in that's not correct. And sometimes it's something simple as you put too many zeros in for something, where $60 ends up being 6,000 because you put 60.00 instead of just the 60. So those are the kinds of things that, because we're professionals and we do it all the time, we'll see that right off the bat. Like we'll look at your income, and then if we see your expected family contribution doesn't match what we think it should be based on your income, then we know something was done incorrectly. So that was a really long answer to your question, but I do think it's of value to do that. And also, if for nothing else, there, especially the sites that offer free scholarships to people who attend, it's worth it to go and have someone review it, and two, to enter into the scholarship drawing, or I think a lot of them do iPads now. So it's worth it to go just for that. Also, several of the sites, almost all of them that I know, they offer scholarship information. They have people from admissions offices there. So they cover a whole gambit of the college process. So it's not just, while the FAFSA completion is our primary purpose, we do offer other things. So as I apologize to others, but that's a long answer to the question, but I hope I addressed what it is that you had wanted to know. Okay. And this is a long question, so let me take a minute to read it, and then I'll read it to you. And it says, what happens if the students if the student doesn't live with their parents and isn't going to get help from either of their parents? Do they still have to gather their parents' information to fill the FAFSA, for example, a homeless student? Okay, now if the student is home, those are two, maybe three different questions all in one. I'll start with homeless. If the student is homeless and you have to meet a certain criteria and be certified homeless, and the FAFSA clearly tells you what they define as homeless. If the student meets that criteria, that particular student is considered independent. If the student just can't get information from either of their parents, that's a different situation, and the FAFSA does address that. However, the student won't be eligible for all of the programs. The FAFSA does allow the student to check a box saying that they won't be able to get information from either of their parents, but that limits them to only being eligible for what they call the unsubsidized Stafford loan, and that's a couple of $1,000s for that loan, and that is not an interest-free loan. So it's really not in the student's best interest to do that. What I suggest is, if the student is having that type of situation, I suggest that they still fill out the FAFSA, go to one of our sites, and the representatives there can actually walk them through how they need to complete the form. Because the answer really is, it depends on what their specific situation is. Not living with your parents doesn't necessarily mean that you're not dependent, because there are other reasons. You could be in a boarding school, or other reasons why you don't live with your parents that have nothing to do with you not being dependent. So I hope I addressed the question for you, Ms. Diaz. I hope I have, and if not, feel free to just send a follow-up question, and I'll try to be as specific as I can without knowing more about the person. Next question, is the amount of financial aid also determined on the cost of tuition at the school you will attend? Yes. As we talked about briefly in the presentation, the expected family contribution is only part of the determination. The school will use the cost of attendance. They subtract from that the expected family contribution, and then they will come up with the base, which is called need, and they start at that point as to how they will award the student. Other factors that affect what a student may get would be what programs the institution participates in, because not every institution participates in every program. So there are some schools who don't participate in the student loan program. There are some schools who don't have college work study. There are some schools who have little or no supplemental grant. So there, it all depends on what programs the school actually participates in. There are schools who don't participate in the Perkins loan. So it depends on what programs the school participates in. But that is an excellent question, because it is important to know that there are other factors that are considered when determining how much money a student will get. Now, this question is asking is the FAFSA able to be filled out in foreign countries? Now, it depends on the countries. There are some countries that Micronesia, and I can't think of the other couple off the top of my head, but there are some countries that are eligible for certain parts of federal aid. And if you look at the FAFSA online, it will tell you which ones. If your question is asking, can those countries that if you're away and at another country, can you fill out the FAFSA wherever you are? You can complete the FAFSA anywhere as long as you have access to the internet. But if your question is certain foreign countries, or is the FAFSA money available to be used in foreign countries, in only in certain cases, and those are outlined in the FAFSA itself. Those countries, that non-U.S. countries where federal financial aid is available to be used. Okay. I understand I can estimate my 2013 income on the form since I haven't submitted the 2013 return. But can I use my 2012 return as my income estimate? Yes. Yes, you can. You can use that as your income estimate, but what I suggest you do is bring that along with your last pay stub or your W-2 if you have it to the site, and we'll work with you to actually help you come up with a better estimate. But if you don't have anything else, that would be a good place to start. Okay, this is another excellent question. There is no College Go Sunday in Virginia. Can I attend one in Maryland or D.C.? Yes, you're free to attend one in any of the states because the programs are free to anyone. And we actually will, depending on what part of Virginia you're going to be in, we actually have the Maryland site. There's one in D.C. at the YMCA in D.C. And we also have several in Montgomery County, PG County, and we have one that will actually be really close to Virginia, where we're going to have in the Delmarva area in Maryland, where we're going to have transportation help bring people back and forth because of the span in a triangle type area. So if you want to look at the Maryland site to see what locations are near you, DC has a program and Maryland has several that will be close to Virginia. So feel free to look at any of our locations. If I know what school I'm going to, should I still enter in all the schools I got accepted to? Well, yes, because you never know. You never know how circumstances would be. I wouldn't say list all the schools you were accepted to, but maybe one or two that you know that if something doesn't go quite right with the school where you want to go, then these are places that will already have your information. It's better to have them already have your information than to have to make a decision at the last minute and for them to maybe possibly not have resources available. So you want to make sure you have all of your options available as soon as possible so that you can make a really informed decision. So my suggestion would be to make sure that you enter the school that you really want to go to, but also maybe one or two of the ones where you were accepted since you already applied and you obviously have some level of interest there. Okay. We file our taxes, married joint. On the page, RE Parents Financial Info, for the father income, we put the figure in from our 1040. Do we leave the line specifying mother's income blank? Okay, well, what you should do when you're filling it out, you should put the information in. The adjusted gross income would be for both, but at the bottom, when it asks you specifically father's income and mother's income, you should separate the two. So you separate it out. The adjusted gross income will be what the joint adjusted gross income is. That part is correct. But when it comes down to the breakdown and the next part, because it will ask you for father's income, and then it will ask you for the mother's income. And so you would put the earnings separately for each person, not put it all in one spot and zero in the other, because that would not be accurate. And also that affects how the formula operates. And you're welcome. Must the awards given through FAFSA be paid back? Well, it depends on the type of the award. Anything, for most cases, anything that's a grant, like the Pell Grant or the SEOG, the supplemental grants, and things like that, don't have to be repaid. Work study, you have to earn that, so that doesn't have to be paid. Most loans have to be repaid. So those are the things that you want to keep in mind when you're looking at what you're going to accept. And I always say your loans are a good thing if managed properly. So you want to make sure you look at what it is you want to do and what you need, and only borrow what you need, because you do have to pay it back. And there are some situations, depending on the type of loan, where there are programs that will assist you in paying them back, but that's long term. So you still want to borrow as little as possible, unless you really have to. Okay, and this is another excellent question. You all are doing just wonderful with these questions. Okay, does the FAFSA cover the summer term for incoming freshmen? It depends on the institution, and because it depends on how the institution works. Some institutions use summer as what we call a header, which means it's the beginning of the academic year, and some use it as a trailer, which means it's the end of an academic year. So depending on how that school processes money and whether or not they have summer classes or summer aid, that would determine whether or not you can use the FAFSA for summer. But typically the FAFSA does cover the summer if those other criteria are in place. Like I said, the school offers summer programs and they have money for summer. So, like in some cases, you may have to fill out the FAFSA for this year and the one for next year for summer, because it will cover two different academic years depending on the school. How many schools can I list on the FAFSA? I have twins. I have to fill out one for FAFSA for each child. Correct. That is correct. You have to fill out the FAFSA for each child. And I believe it's 10 schools you can put on the FAFSA. I know we just started work doing our programs last week, so I believe it's up to 10 schools. And keep in mind that if you have to make a change and add another school, you have to take one of those 10 off. So you want to make sure that when you select the schools that you want to send the information to, you make sure that you send the information to the ones that you really want to receive it. And congratulations having twins. So you really need to visit one of our sites. Okay. And this is a question: did I understand you correctly? The EFC number is meant to cover 4 years, or is the EFC per year? The expected family contribution is recalculated each year because you have to complete a FAFSA each year. What I was mentioning is that when you're looking at how much you have to contribute, and that doesn't necessarily have to be the EFC, that could be money you saved or whatever. I said that you have to make sure that money is to cover all 4 years. And the example I gave was if you had $5,000 and the student is in a 5-year program, you really don't have $5,000 for 1 year. You have 1,000 for each of the 5 years, because you have to make sure that you have that money and you map it out to cover the whole time frame that the student is enrolled. So I hope that's clear. If not, feel free to send another question. Okay, and this is another question about filing and what can you use. And the question is just asking if you haven't filed to 2013, can you use the 2012 tax return? And yes, that's acceptable for estimating. And again, if you're going to do that, as we stated earlier, we want you to make sure that you bring any recent pay stubs and things like that so we can help you estimate more accurately. This is another 529 question, and it would be a parent asset. So you can list that, yes, for the 529. Okay, and this is about a prepaid tuition plan in one state and they live in another. So you would have to contact the state where you have it to see how they would handle that, because each state, their program is different as to how the money can be used. So you want to make sure that with your state, they tell you what their procedure is for using the money in another state and how that will work for you to use it, since it is money that you put away and invested. Okay. And this is a important one, so I'm going to spend a few minutes explaining the IRS data retrieval again. The IRS data retrieval is a process where within the FAFSA, you will answer a series of questions to see, one, if you qualify to even use it. And if you do, once this is available, you will hit a button that will take you into the IRS data system. You will answer a series of questions there. And once you complete that and everything's accepted, then you will be allowed to transfer your information from your IRS already filed and completed tax return into your FAFSA. And it will transfer the data back into the FAFSA for you. This is something that has been in place for a couple of years now, and it really is a great thing for families, because it makes sure you don't have to worry about submitting a tax document to the school. The information is coming straight from the IRS, and it's done all electronically. As long as you meet the criteria to do it, it's something that you can use as a tool. Now, as I mentioned earlier, at this point, that service is not available because people haven't received W-2s and shouldn't, some people haven't filed their taxes at this point. So that's going to be available mid to late February this year. And so what you would be doing now with us at the College Go Sunday site is completing your FAFSA using estimated information. We'll send that out for you. And then once we send that out for you, what will happen is that you will get an estimated expected family contribution. And then once you're able to do the data retrieval in late February, you can go back into that same FAFSA using the PIN that you have and you remembered, and go in and make a correction using the data retrieval. So that's all you're going to be updating at that point would be your income information. So that's an excellent question, and we do strongly encourage that all of the families take the time to go back in and actually use that. Okay, this is a different question, so I'm going to try to read this one. It says, I'm retired and living with my daughter who is paying the mortgage. Myself, my spouse, and 2 daughters are in the deed. Do I have to list myself as owner of the house? Okay, well, you're not. Okay, so basically you're living with your daughter, but three people own the house. So, well, they really don't ask you about your primary residency on the FAFSA. Now, unless you're considering the house to be an asset or an investment, if that's the case, then you'll be listing that as an asset. So it really would depend, and I would need a whole lot more information about that. But that's something that you can bring with you when you go to one of the College Go Sunday sites, and uh, our volunteers would be more than happy to walk you through that process so that you won't under or overestimate your net worth on the FAFSA. Okay, let me see if we can find a couple of different things. Okay, here's, okay, and this is a good question. And we talked about deadlines earlier in the presentation. And this question says, colleges have different deadline dates for FAFSA. Some are February 1st, others are March 1st. If I submit my FAFSA prior to February 1st, will it be sent to all colleges regardless of their deadline? And the answer is yes. So once you complete the FAFSA, and in fact, that was one of my recommendations, to pick the earliest date for FAFSA deadline and send your FAFSA in for everybody at that same time. So they all will have it and you'll meet all of the deadlines and won't have to worry about it. So that's an excellent question and an excellent reminder that you do need to make sure that you do your FAFSA early. Okay. This is a good one. It says, if you make a salary over 100,000, do you still think your child will have a chance at financial aid? And it's not so much about the income because it depends on the family size. So a lot of factors go into, it's not strictly just the income. So it would depend on the family size, the age of the older parent, the state where you live, if it's more than one person in college. All of those things go into that. It says, is this year's FAFSA just for 1 year, and do you have to do it every year? And the answer is you have to reapply every year filling out the FAFSA. And the FAFSA is going to be available after January 1 every year. So you want to mark that date on your calendar, celebrate the new year, and complete your FAFSA. And you also want to attend one of the College Go Sunday programs, because our programs usually run anywhere from January, February, and typically they end around March 1st. And this is another part two to that question. It's asking about this, will the expected family contribution change if you have more than one person in college? And typically the way it works, if whatever the expected family contribution is typically divided by the number of children in college. So if it was $500 for one person and you have two, it's going to be $250. Okay, I'm going to try to find one more. Okay. Okay, here's one. Okay. And the question is dealing with child support, and this is a good question. It says, and this will be our next to last question if I can answer it quickly. It says, I get child support, but it will be up in June. Do they consider that the year the child begins college? And it says the child support listed from the 2013 taxes will no longer be there the year she begins school. So should I let each college know? Yes. First, you still have to report it, and that's the same with anything. You would have to, if you work but you lost your job at some point, you still have to list the income that you earned in 2013, and then you talk to each college to let them know that your situation has changed, and they will tell you whether or not they're going to use what we call professional judgment to make any adjustment. So that's an excellent question, and I thank you for that. And I thank all of you for the wonderful questions. Let's see if we can find one really quick one. Okay, I'm going to try this last one real quick. And it says, what if you are divorced and one parent is interested in your child's education, the other doesn't want to be involved? Well, it depends on who the student lives with. So as long as the person the student lives with is interested, that's the person who needs to complete the FAFSA. So if that's not the case, you want to talk to the individual schools so they can tell you what their specific guidelines will be. Well, I want to thank you all for your excellent questions and for signing on to the College Week Live presentation today, and look forward to some other wonderful presentations. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening.